So Social Security has two disability benefit programs, and the first one that we're going to be covering is the one that was established in 1954, which is that Title II program, and it covers Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI. It also covers the Social Security for an adult child of an individual who is retired, deceased, or disabled, and that is known as Social Security Childhood Disability Benefits, or SSCDB, and that previously was known as Social Security for the Disabled Adult Child. Well, we bring that up primarily because there are certain things in the world of Medicaid where they still use that term, SSDAC or DAC. So we'll probably hold that and keep that in mind as we move towards talking about medical benefits in a future module. Now, some people call these Title II benefits SSA, or regular Social Security. Have you heard them do the same?
Yes.
And usually that's a great pointer that they're not talking about supplemental security income, or SSI. People usually know exactly what that benefit is, and they will call it out separately, the supplemental security income. And that's very different than the terms that they use for that Title II SSDI or SSCDB benefit. And you know, Scott, I didn't mention earlier, but under Title II, there is also Social Security for widows or widowers who have a disability. And we have not spoken about that, and we probably will not cover that a great deal in this series because it's such a small window of time in which somebody is eligible for that benefit. But it also falls under those Title II benefits. For this session, though, we are going to be focused solely on Title XVI SSI, or Supplemental Security Income. How do people qualify for SSI? Because it's a general tax fund program, it does not tap into monies that are in the Social Security Trust Fund. It is defined for people who have limited income and limited resources. In other words, it's for people who are aged, blind, or disabled, who are of limited income or limited resources and don't have a long work history, or someone else who has a work history that they could tap into those Social Security Trust Fund benefits for. So, limited income, we're going to talk more about what that means, and then resources of less than $2,000 for an individual, or for a couple, it's resources of less than $3,000. So in other words, there's really not twice the resources for a married couple. There's just 1.5 times the resources.
Right. So Susan, I have a question.
Sure.
I found that people often get confused about income and resources. How are those two different?
Right. So I think probably the easiest illustration would be that if somebody gives me a bunch of money in the middle of the month, that when they give me the money, when I receive it, it's income. But as of the beginning of the very next month, very first moment of that very next month, if I'm retaining those dollars, then it is a resource, and it does count towards the resource limit, and it may make me ineligible for benefits.
So the resources are only looked at the first of the month?
Yes.
Okay.
And income is counted when it is received.
Got it.
So how much is the benefit? The federal benefit rate, or FBR, for 2019 for an individual on SSI is $771. And then for a married couple, if both spouses are receiving that supplemental security income benefit, the amount is $1,157 for both spouses. So here again, 1.5 times the amount that an individual would be eligible to receive is attributed or remains for a couple to receive in the maximum benefit amount. But how much is paid depends on the amount of income that the individual is receiving or the couple is receiving, as well as the living situation. And the reason for this is that supplemental security income is intended to provide individuals with the means to take care of their basic needs. And if they have other monies or other supports in taking care of their basic needs, then that's going to start to impact the check amount. You'll also notice that on this slide, we have the medical benefits noted under each of the different disability umbrellas, disability benefit umbrellas. And under SSI is Medicaid. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be on SSI to get Medicaid, but it does mean that those people who are on SSI are automatically eligible for Medicaid. And in fact, the rules for Medicaid are defined under the same Social Security information that applies to SSI. So we're talking about limited income and limited resources unless there is something specific that applies that allows those things to not count when it comes to Medicaid. And you'll also notice that on the Title II side of things, when people are drawing a benefit off of their own or somebody else's record, somebody else has paid in or they have paid into Social Security, that the benefit that comes with that for medical coverage is Medicare. So that is the benefit that individuals automatically eventually get after a period of time when they've been on Title II benefits. Again, that doesn't mean that somebody on Title II wouldn't be eligible for Medicaid as well as Medicare, but the provisions of the coverage for Medicaid are defined in SSI rule. What happens if other income is received? For people that are on Title 16 SSI benefits, the check is adjusted monthly based on the income that is received. And we're going to go through a formula with some examples after you talk a little bit about the living arrangement, just so that people understand the impact and what happens when other things are provided that help somebody take care of those basic needs.
Okay, now we're going to talk about living arrangement and income and how each affect SSI. And when we talk about income, we're talking about two different types of income. We're talking about earned income, which comes from a job, and unearned income, which does not come from a job. For example, a cash gift, that would be unearned income. And living arrangement, earned income, and unearned income all affect the SSI benefit. Let's start off talking about living arrangement and SSI. So as you were saying, Susan, the purpose of SSI is to pay for a person's sort of basic needs, food and shelter needs, right? So Social Security wants to know about a person's living arrangement when they're making decisions about SSI eligibility and the amount that the person receives. So, for example, let's say someone is living with their parents, and I see this often when people are younger, maybe they're age 18, they qualify for SSI, and they're living with their parents. Their parents may not be charging rent. And so when the person applies for SSI and qualifies for SSI, they become eligible for less than the full federal benefit rate, less than the $771 for 2019. It will be reduced by approximately 1/3. That's the most it can be reduced by. But the logic behind this is that if a person does not have to pay for the rent, then they do not need a full SSI check to pay for their basic needs. Right. So if a person is not paying rent, it actually works to their advantage to pay rent so they can qualify for the full SSI check, right?
Right.
Now, interestingly, there are some other situations where people may not be paying for their rent or they receive public support, but they do qualify for a full SSI check. So, for example, people who are homeless will often qualify for a full SSI check. It may not be reduced by 1/3, like someone who's living with their parents and not paying their rent. And then also public housing support. And that also goes for, say, food benefits. If someone is getting support with their housing, say Section 8 housing, maybe they're having a reduced rent that they have to pay, that does not affect their SSI. They maintain the full SSI check in that situation. And then also food benefits. A person can receive food benefits and the full SSI check. I think what's important for people to realize, though, is that it's not just income that can affect their SSI, it's also their living arrangement. And so if a person has a change in their living arrangement, if they're going to start paying rent, or even if they move, they really need to notify Social Security and give them that information. Right. So as we discussed earlier, there's two types of income that Social Security looks at. There's earned income, and that's gross income received from a job, and there's unearned income, and that's money that the person doesn't earn. Let's talk a little bit about that earned income piece. So first of all, we're talking about gross income. That's income that the person earns, but before they take out taxes, before they take out union dues, before they take out retirement benefits, they're looking at that dollar amount. That's the amount that a person's going to report to Social Security. It's also the amount that they received from a job. So they're going to look at the amount of money that person actually receives between the 1st and the 30th or 31st. That's the amount that gets reported. Now, unearned income is money that the person did not earn from a job. So, for example, SSDI. SSDI is another benefit program that we talked about. That's considered unearned income. So if a person has SSI and they qualify for SSDI, it will have an impact on their SSI benefit check. Also, if they get gifts, this is something that happens fairly often. Someone gives someone on SSI a cash gift. Technically speaking, that person is supposed to report that cash gift to Social Security. And when they do that, that's considered unearned income. And as we'll see, that actually causes the SSI to go down significantly. Inheritance, child support, those all are considered unearned income. And the reason we talk about earned income and unearned income separately is because each have a different effect on SSI. We find that the rules with unearned income are much less forgiving than the rules around earned income. And they do that because Social Security wants people to work. They've built in work incentives, so it has less of an impact on the SSI check when a person reports their gross wages. So there are exceptions to the income that Social Security looks at. This is excluded income. Here are some examples: income tax returns and tax credits. And so, for example, it wouldn't make sense if you got a tax return from the government and then they turned around and reduced the person's SSI. So that's considered an excluded income. Same as Section 8 and basic food benefits. We talked about that earlier. That type of public assistance generally does not affect the SSI. Same as low-income home energy assistance. Now, this is interesting. Bills paid by someone for things other than food or shelter. So let's say that my uncle wants to give me $100 and I have SSI. If he just gives me $100, that's going to be considered unearned income, right? But if my uncle were instead to take that $100 and use it to pay for, say, my cell phone bill, or maybe buy me some furniture, that money is not coming to me, and it's not paying for either food or shelter. And in that situation, that is not considered unearned income.
Right.
So if someone wants to give me a gift, that might be a wiser way to do it.
Yes. People often ask questions about gift cards, and what do you tell them when they ask you about giving someone a gift card instead of giving them cash, for instance?
Yeah, if the person has a gift card and that is available to them to be able to purchase, say, something related to food or shelter, then it would be considered unearned income. But if it was a gift card for something that was not related to food or shelter, then generally that's not considered unearned income. That's the information that I provide. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and so that can be tricky.
Yep.
If you buy, let's say, a gift card for Fred Meyer,
Correct.
then you can purchase food at Fred Meyer, and that means that you should report, because that's unearned income, right?
That's right.
But let's say that it is something like a gift card to a beauty store, and you can't pull any cash off that card. That would not be considered something that was accessible to you for food or shelter,
right.
And therefore
would
not be considered unearned income.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of tricky, and sometimes it's easier if people just think of other ways to do it.
I agree.
Yeah.
And, if someone's not sure, they can report it, right?
Right.
They can report it to Social Security and let Social Security make that decision.
Yes.
I think it's always best to err on the side of reporting income to Social Security. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the other tricky things about a gift card is, can you pull cash out of it? Not just where it is that you can use it, but can you get cash back out of that gift card?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, because then it should be counted as income.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So something about SSI that's important for folks to understand is that while they're receiving SSI, if there's unearned income that's available, they should pursue it and accept it. And so where we see this is around unemployment benefits. Let's say someone's on SSI and they've been working, and then they get laid off of no fault of their own, and they can qualify for unemployment benefits.
Right.
Technically, they're supposed to apply for unemployment benefits. And if they qualify for these unemployment benefits, that's going to be considered unearned income. And that's going to affect their SSI. And I've seen instances where those unemployment benefits are so large that it knocks the person off of SSI.
Yes.
But they have to do that. That's one of the conditions of receiving SSI. They're supposed to pursue any other funding that may be available to them.
Correct.
I want to talk about the 2-month accounting cycle. So, first of all, we mentioned this earlier, earned income always counts in the month that it is received. So, let's say that I get paid every 2 weeks. Probably around twice a year, I'm going to receive 3 paychecks in a month, right?
Yes.
I'm actually going to report all 3 paychecks in that month to Social Security for that month. So it's whatever I receive from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, both earned income and unearned income. That's the income that I report to Social Security.
Right.
Now, when I report it to Social Security, it takes Social Security a couple of months to make an adjustment to my SSI. So let's say, for example, I'm working in January and I receive income and I report it to Social Security. I'm going to report it to Social Security by the 10th day of February. So I take the income that I received in January, the gross income, and I report it by the 10th day of February. So now Social Security has the month of February to figure out what that's going to do to my SSI. And we're going to be talking about those calculations that Social Security uses. If it reduces my SSI, it's going to happen in the month of March. So when I get a reduced benefit check in March, it's based off of my income that I received in January. Reporting income for SSI. And as we were talking about, people have to report their income to SSI. Right. There's different ways to do it. Now, when a person receiving SSI first starts working, Social Security wants that person to talk to a representative, tell them that they're working, and then that representative is going to explain these options for reporting income. These are a few of them. So a mobile app. There's actually an app that you can get on your smartphone to report earned income. You can also do it by telephone. There's a phone number that they'll give you that you can call in and report your gross wages. There's also a website here on the PowerPoint that people can go in and they can report their income. Lastly, they can do it by mail, or they can go in person at the local office. Now, it used to be, I would say 10 years ago, that people typically had to report income just by mail or by going in the office. So now it's become much easier for people to be able to report their income for SSI purposes.
Yes.
That's for earned income. For unearned income, we recommend that people report it by mail or go into the local office in person and to give that information to the Social Security rep. I have not been able to use the mobile app because I do not receive SSI. So I'm not sure if people can report unearned income through the mobile app, but I've heard that they cannot. Have you heard the same thing?
Yes,
Okay.
I have. And I too, I've tried to test it, but I can't get beyond just the very introductory screens there.
Yeah. One tip is that if you're going to be mailing anything into Social Security, I recommend you do it certified mail. You know, Social Security, they're a huge organization, and just sometimes things get lost. If they lose something, there's no evidence that you actually sent it in unless you mail it in certified. You mail it in certified, you get a receipt when they receive it, and that's your evidence. So if ever that's contested, you have proof of that.
What about people, though, who report by telephone or even maybe by mobile app or in person at the local office? How do they track so that they can prove that they actually reported?
My understanding is when people report through the mobile app or by telephone, they get some, at least with mobile app, they get a confirmation. They get a confirmation email of what they've reported. If they were to go in person at the local office, I tell people that they should write down the date that they went in there, who is it that they talked to, and what is it that they talked about. If the Social Security rep gave them any advice, probably not a bad idea to write down that advice as well. Right. And I found that if you have some documentation and you go into the local office and you're going to give it to a Social Security rep, you can ask them to make a copy.
Yes.
And then they'll stamp it as received, and then you have, that's your receipt that they actually received that documentation.
And I think even with the other mechanisms, it's not that difficult to write down the date that
Yeah.
you reported. And if you just do that on a regular basis, then you have a running record all in one place with your pay stubs.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's
Yeah.
really good advice. And so just a high level view of this, Social Security does do redetermination reviews. They tend to do this on an annual basis, but what I'm hearing is that actually they're happening less frequently than annually for some people. And this is an opportunity for Social Security to get information about the person's income, resources, and living arrangement. Even if a person is reporting their income on a monthly basis, they're still going to have to go through this redetermination review.
Right.
And this tends to happen in person, by phone, or via mail.
So now we're going to get into discussing income, both earned and unearned, and the various exclusions or work incentives that can be applied before counting the remaining income towards the SSI benefit. So in this table, we have broken out the different types of income, and the reason for this is that with SSI and unearned income, you are only allowed a single general exclusion, a $20 up to a $20 general exclusion before the rest of the income is countable. And with earned income, you are allowed additional work incentives like a $65 earned income exclusion and an additional 1/2 earned income exclusion, in addition to that $20 general exclusion that we were able to apply with unearned income only. And then there is also the breaking out of these exclusions when you have a combination of both unearned and earned income. So we're going to work through some examples utilizing the SSI federal benefit rate for 2019 of $771 for a single individual in our examples. Now, I just want to make sure that people are aware that you can go and get the updated numbers annually so that you're operating with the most recent federal benefit rate when it comes to SSI, in order to assure that you really are pretty accurate about how much money you can expect to be receiving after countable unearned or earned income is applied to the SSI
That's right.
federal benefit rate.
I think people on SSI will often get a letter that will explain the increase of SSI if that occurs at the beginning of the year. But I know when I'm wanting to research this, I just do a web search, FBR 2019 or whatever the year is. And Social Security does a pretty good job of showing the past amounts for FBR and the future amounts for FBR, at least for the next year.
Yes, and the other thing is that even if an individual receives a letter, if they do the, shoebox storage method,
Yep.
Filing, they may not be able to access that at the point when they need it. And so it's really good to be able to figure out how you can use search terms to find this information at any time without having to dig back through a bunch of information to try to find that letter.
Well, that's so true. And when people receive SSI, they receive so much information from Social Security, correct?
Right.
Often monthly.
Yes.
And so it'd be really easy to miss that information.
Yeah, for sure. So the first example is with unearned income and SSI. So let's say that I have somebody that gives me $200 in a cash gift. And the first thing that I'm able to do is apply this general exclusion of $20. That's an exclusion that can be applied again to any source of income up to that full $20 amount, but only one time per month can a full $20 amount be applied. That leaves the person with $180 in countable unearned income. So we've completed this first step in determining countable income, and in this case, countable unearned income. We then move to the SSI federal benefit rate of $771, and what we're trying to determine is how much is that check going to be adjusted in that third month after I've received this $200 in a cash gift. So $771 is the SSI federal benefit rate for 2019. I subtract that $180 in countable income, and that means that my SSI will be adjusted to $591. And then finally, this is a step that I recommend to help people understand how much money do you actually have completely, given the amount of money that you've been given or you've earned during a given month, and this adjustment in your SSI check. So if we take the $200 cash gift and we add that adjusted SSI amount of $591, it brings us to a total gross amount of $791. So in this situation, it's a good illustration of how much unearned income truly impacts the SSI benefit rate, right?
That's
the
right.
amount that you actually receive. Because there's really only just that one general exclusion of $20 that people can apply.
Right.
So if my aunt or uncle wants to give me $200 in cash, they might be better off just giving me $20, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Interesting.
So the next example is with SSI and earned income. Now let's say, for example, that somebody has a job in which they are getting paid $800 per month in gross wages. Mm-hmm. Now remember that $20 general exclusion that we were able to use with unearned income. Here we get to apply it to earned income, since there isn't unearned income in this situation.
Okay.
So we're going to take that $20 general exclusion, and then we get to apply an earned income exclusion. This is a work incentive. It only applies to earned income, and therefore it really is an incentive for people to work. And it's $65. Not that impressive, right? But still, it's something. And that brings us to a subtotal of $715 so far in countable income. But then there's another earned income exclusion, and this one is pretty powerful. It means that you're really only counting 1/2 of the remaining earned income towards your SSI benefit. So it's called the 1/2 earned income exclusion, and you divide that subtotal of $715 in earned income by 2, by 1/2, and it brings us to $357.50 in countable earned income. And then finally, we move to taking a look at what that does to the SSI check. So with an FBR of $771 for an individual for SSI for 2019, we subtract that $357.50, and that leaves the individual with an adjusted SSI check of $413.50. So here we go. This looks a lot more impressive, right?
Yeah.
You get to retain a lot more money, and you're finally bumping up beyond that SSI FBR in a much more significant way. And in fact, when I work with individuals and I try to show them the value of work, I again go to this place where I add together how much did they get in gross wages, how much was their adjusted SSI amount, and you can see in this situation the $800 in wages plus the $413.50 in adjusted SSI means that the individual has a gross amount of $1,213.50.
Yeah, I think that's pretty powerful.
It is.
After the $20 and $65 exclusions, the SSI is only going down by about 50 cents for every dollar.
Right.
So you can actually come out with quite a bit more money in your pocket from earning wages as compared to just getting a cash gift.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good incentive for work.
Truly pushes you towards work efforts.
Yeah.
It's the only way you have more money.
Right.
Of any value anyway, right? It's a way to work your way out of poverty.
Right.
And a lot of the time, people are just afraid that work is going to impact their benefits, to the point that they don't want to do anything that would do that. They might even work at a point where they've only got the $20 and the $65. So a total of $85 that they're earning each month. And
Right.
what a shame when they could be pocketing so much of what they're earning in employment beyond that.
Right. You know, one of the myths that I hear is that you can't earn any money on SSI, or you can't earn more than $771. And
Yes.
this shows that both of those are completely incorrect.
Right. Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
a question about this, Susan. Sometimes I work with people who have two jobs, do they apply that $20 general exclusion and the $65 earned income exclusion twice for the income from each job?
No.
Okay.
So what they do is they add the gross wage amount from any and all earned income
Got it.
together before they apply these exclusions.
Okay.
Our next example is a situation where someone is getting both unearned income as well as earned income when they're on SSI. So let's say that this individual on SSI is receiving a cash gift of $200, and they also earn $800 gross in wages per month. So let's start with the $200 cash gift. Now remember, in the first situation, we applied the general exclusion to the unearned income amount. The next example, we applied it to the earned income amount.
Right.
And in this situation where you have both earned and unearned income, you first apply it to unearned income. So this $20 general exclusion is going to be used up by applying it to the unearned income, leaving the individual with $180 in countable unearned income. And now we're going to go over and take a look at what is countable out of the earned income. So with $800 in gross wages, the first exclusion we can apply is that work incentive, the earned income exclusion of $65. So we skipped right over the $20 since we already applied it. And that leaves us with a subtotal of $735. We then can apply that 1/2 earned income exclusion, which brings us to $367.50 in countable earned income. And then finally, we need to take both countable income amounts and add them together so that we know what the total countable income is. So the unearned income of $180 that's countable, and the earned income that is countable of $367.50 combined bring us to $547.50 in total countable income. And our final step would be to figure out with SSI how much is going to be subtracted from my SSI amount based on this total countable income. So if I apply this $547.50 to the $771 SSI federal benefit rate for 2019, it brings us to an adjusted SSI check of $223.50. So finally, if I want to show the individual how much they have in total, adding the $200 in the cash gift plus the $800 in gross wages plus the adjusted SSI amount of $223.50, that means that the individual has a total amount of $1,223.50.
You know, if I had first looked at that, someone receiving a cash gift of $200 and then also making $800 gross, that's a lot of money coming in. So you would just think that the SSI would go away at a glance. But actually, they still come out with over $200 of SSI.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it really does show that even if you're receiving some unearned income, right, if there's still SSI remaining, you benefit greatly from work, that you can really enhance how much you have in total by working in this scenario as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question, Susan. Let's say someone is on SSI and they have $800 gross per month from a job, and then they qualify for some SSDI.
Yes.
And that SSDI, say, is $200.
Yes.
Do they do the same calculation?
They absolutely do, because
Okay.
SSDI is unearned income.
Okay.
As you mentioned earlier, when you went through all of those examples, all of those things, unemployment, child support, somebody giving you money, you know, whether it's in the form of cash or a gift card that can be used for food or shelter, SSDI, SSCDB, those other Social Security benefits, those are all unearned income.